Hi everybody, Beanmeister22 here. Today we're going to do a different kind of rock tumbling / polishing. We are going to use a brass cleaner. That's right, this is a vibratory cleaner. A vibrating cleaner for cleaning off your brass before you reload it. Rather than tumbling it in a drum as we've done in the past, this uses the vibrating action of the rocks and the grit and the filler. I don't know what this is. It's very heavy. I'm going to set this aside. The white pellets are ceramic pellets. It's a filler. This thing needs to be 2/3 to 3/4 full. In other words, it needs to be mostly full to get the good vibrating action. Now, there's a couple of major differences between polishing rocks this way than we do with the tumbling polishers. First and foremost, obviously, it's not tumbling and bouncing around on each other. It's vibrating back and forth and rubbing on each other. And that makes a difference in how the stones are going to turn out when we're done. With the tumblers, chunks are broken off more readily. Anything that sticks out is not going to be sticking out anymore. And eventually, if you tumble it long enough, it's going to be smooth, small, and very rounded. But with vibration, you're going to polish the stones without changing the shape radically. Now, yes, you're going to have the sharp edges smoothed, and anything that's sticking out may or may not break off, but the rock is going to basically keep its original shape. So if your goal is smooth, rounded ovals and spheres, this is not the polishing method for you. But if your goal is to have some cool, shiny, smooth rock, this works, and it works quicker than tumbling. Just like with the tumbler, you need to put the grit in. I don't start with a coarse grit. I usually start with a medium. So you're not starting with a step 1, you're going to start with a step 2 or 3. And something else specific to these vibratory polishers is you use a lot more grit than you would in a tumbler. And that's because it polishes in a different manner than a tumbler. Additionally, with a tumbler, there's a considerable amount of water in that barrel. If you remember, we put the rocks in, we put the grit in, and then we make sure the rocks are completely covered with water. In the case of a vibratory polisher, you need just enough water or moisture to get the grit to stick to your stones you're polishing. You don't want to have too much water in there, but you need to have enough water to keep things rubbing and moving. The grit will stick to the wet stones, and as they rub together, they will polish. But if you have too much water in this, the grit is just all going to run to the bottom, and your stones aren't really going to polish like they're supposed to. As you've seen in our tumblers, during the polishing process, a slurry is created by all the little pieces of stone and stuff that have all rubbed off. In the case of a vibratory polisher, you're not going to have that same slurry. You're going to have a paste, but it's not going to be the same as with that traditional tumbler. When you use a vibratory polisher like this, it's a lot quicker than with the rock tumbler. And something very specific to this, if you remember with a tumbler, because the rocks are all just bouncing off each other, you need to stay at the same relative hardness. It doesn't so much matter when you're using the vibration method, so you could have some softer crystals in there with some of your harder stones, and you're not going to get the same level of damage as you would if they were tumbling and bouncing off each other. It's also important that you keep this hopper mostly full. As you're watching this, you can see how the rocks move up from the bottom on the sides and then go right down the center, kind of like you're mixing a cake batter. You need to have it moist enough that the grit sticks to your rocks you're trying to polish. But as I said before, not so much moisture that it washes the grit off. It's a fine line you're balancing here. And because moisture is so critical in this kind of polishing, you need to stop this several times a day and either check your moisture level or adjust it if needed. If it's dried out too much, you need to add a little moisture. Or if it's wet, well, I don't know what we can do if it's too wet. Just, hope that the water dries up. Something you'll see at the end of this video is this is noisy. This is loud. It's a lot louder with the lid off, but the lid doesn't do all that much to quiet it up. It is very noisy process. but really it is well worth it. Okay, so we're going to run this polisher for just 2 or 3 days, and then we'll see what it looks like. As I alluded to earlier, this is a lot quicker. You can accomplish in 2 or 3 days what takes roughly a week, 7 days, in a tumbler. All right, so have you ever seen this done? Did you ever know you can take your brass polisher for reloading and turn it into a rock polisher? Well, I bet some of you knew that. Leave your comments in the comment section. As always, thanks for watching.
Beanmeister 22, the most dangerous man on YouTube.